right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate. All right, I know the Dallas Cowboys
Get this win. I don't know, Jack. It's a big decision.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem with saying space.
Pittsburgh at Buffalo.
Thank you. I thought I was right. So anyway,
Yeah, Mac, you're really interested in these playoffs.
so
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning. You're listening to the Mac and Jack Sports Show on Northeast Streaming Sports.
welcome to the Mac and Jack Sports Show as we start off your day on Roku, our midweek sports show on Wednesday. A lot of sports to get to. I mean, let's move us back into the. So we're surrounded by the Mac and Jack logo there, and at the bottom of the screen, as you'll see, we have all the ticker going with all the sports news. So we're going to try and get to all this as long as me and Jack can stop from bantering back and forth. But you know that's going to happen. But anyway, good morning, everyone out there. Good morning, Jack. And I want to kind of get into free agency right away. You know, there was a signing with Paul George going to the San Antonio Spurs last night. I don't know about you, Jack.
Chris Paul.
Chris Paul. What I say?
You said Paul George.
Oh, that's next. That's why I said that.
Look, I make those mistakes, Mac, when I hear myself on replay, as well.
So
I made one last night when I was on a show. I meant to say Carmelo Anthony never won an NBA championship, and I said Isaiah Thomas. I saw it on the replay. I never meant to say Isaiah Thomas, obviously. So we're more forgiving of you, Mac, now.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know about you, but Paul George to me is not a big name anymore, Jack. I mean, at one time, Paul George was it. I mean, maybe he helped San Antonio Spurs with his experience over there. Maybe he doesn't. I don't think he said he didn't want to be a coach. He wants to play more. And San Antonio said that they would play him more than not. And I don't know if this is a big move or it's a good move even. I mean, why not stay young? Why not stay young and upbeat and keep pushing the ball? And what are your thoughts on that?
Mixed feelings on that. I mean, I think it's a good pickup for San Antonio. I've never been the biggest Chris Paul fan. I understand he's a future Hall of Famer. He's going to go to the Hall of Fame. And if I had a vote, chances are I would vote for him when the time came. But I never considered him a truly impact point guard. He's never won an NBA title. And I don't want to hear, well, he hasn't been on good teams. He was with that LA Clipper team under Doc, Rivers, with guys like Blake Griffin, a team that was ready to win, yet the Clippers could never get to the NBA Finals. Okay, yeah. They could never quite take the next step. And then he's moved around to several teams, to Houston, the et cetera. And it just, hasn't worked out for him. And he's at his age after being with Golden State last year. He didn't play as much as he wanted to. And Chris Paul was used to being a star in the league, meaning he'd get big minutes. He wants the extra minutes. He would rather play a lot and be a starter than be a bench player and be a marginal player and contend for championships. He'd rather be on a non-contender. Well, with that said, I wouldn't count San Antonio out. No, they're not going to win the NBA championship next year. But I can see the Spurs taking a dramatic leap forward and maybe becoming a playoff team next year because Wembanyama's 1 year older and they played together. They're younger players. They're calling the coach Pop. So I can see that being a team that's going to make a dramatic improvement. And if Chris Paul is a part of it, then he'd be there the following year. And to show how much Chris Paul wants to play, he's from Los Angeles. He could have gone to the Lakers. He could have gone to the Clippers. He could have been in the LA area. he certainly made enough money, but he signed a 1-year, $11 million contract with San Antonio to show he can still play. And if he shows him he can still play and he helps with the young players, chances are they'll want him to come back for a second year. And who knows, maybe even a third year. Maybe he finishes his career at San Antonio and maybe he gets that elusive ring at San Antonio down the line. Who knows? But it's a 1-year deal, Mac. 1-year deal. It's not a loss for San Antonio. They're only paying him $11 million for 1 year. So not a bad deal for the Spurs.
I don't know, Jack. I think it's a waste of money and time, to be honest with you. You know, I'd go after, if you want to pick up somebody, pick up a younger player that's on a fringe or something. Maybe being with Wembanyama elevates his game, that fringe player a little bit. I don't know. But anyway, that did happen.
Well, but he says he doesn't want to coach Chris Paul in the NBA. He has no desire to be a coach. But if he can work with the younger players there, you know, and in that factor too, even at age 37, he might be a little better than anyone else they can throw out there at this time.
Maybe you might be right. I don't know. Again, I don't think it's a big story, but it was the biggest story this morning, so I put it out there. Paul George discusses why he didn't sign with the Clippers. He did want to stay in LA. Another guy that wanted to stay in LA, but they had problems with contracts. It took the original 2 years is $60 million, $30 million a year. They got it edged up to $40 to $45 million a year. Took months. What he wanted was to get paid almost the same as Kawhi Leonard. And he's, when they got there together, they wanted to leave together. He didn't care if he was even a little less. So he ends up getting his 3-year, $150 million, which is $3 million less than Kawhi. But he also wanted a no-trade clause. And again, the Clippers fought him on the no-trade clause. And that's when the Philadelphia 76ers swooped in and said, hey, we'll give you all that. And he really wanted to stay with the Clippers, Jack. And I don't know. I mean, I don't know what the Clippers are doing right now as far as trying to build a team better than what they had last year. And right now they're not doing that.
His deal with the Sixers exceeded Kawhi Leonard's deal with the Clippers. He had a 4-year deal with the Sixers that's for over $200 million. And Kawhi Leonard signed for 3 years, $152 million. If you wait till you're a complete free agent, you're going to get the max they could give you. You could get the max. If you sign early, a year so early, you're not going to quite get the max you could get as a free agent. And that's what happened with Kawhi Leonard. He signed a little early in the hope that the Clippers could keep their core together. And I'm not crying for a guy who's making $50 million a year, for the next 3 years. But it just shows you about negotiations with teams. If you really want to keep a player, you don't lowball him in the beginning. I know the thought is we'll lowball him and we know we're going to come up. But the first offer better be at least a viable offer, because if you lowball him by too much, he's going to get so turned off and so insulted by the offer. So you better have a vision. Give him basically your best offer in the beginning. And then move on from him if he's not going to sign with you. I know I like to needle you with the Judge contract, but the Yankees lowballed them originally, and they paid a price for it, many millions eventually later on. And that's what would have happened with the Clippers had they wanted Paul George. But the difference is the Clippers weren't overly enthusiastic in retaining Paul George. He was fine at their price, $30 million a year, $35 million a year. They signed James Harden, the Clippers, to a 2-year contract, $70 million, total $35 million a year. That was within their price range. Paul George perceived himself as a big star who could get a lot more. It only takes one team to pay you the money, and that team was the 76ers. They paid Paul George money.
Something, Jack. If Paul George comes to you, and Paul George is still a very good player. I mean, he's an all-star. He's an all-star caliber player. Played 74 games last year. It seems like in a contract year, the stars will play more games than they normally do. You have an injured Kawhi Leonard all the time, and you pay him $153 million. And Paul George says, okay, I'll sign for $150 million. I just don't want to trade. I want a no trade clause. Why don't you just give it to him? I get maybe you think you could get some pieces for him, but what kind of pieces are you going to
They
get
can't
for
get any pieces. He was a free agent. They knew they weren't getting anything in return.
I'm saying if they did agree to that contract and agree to a no, and the stumbling block at the end was a no trade clause. All the Clippers had to say, okay, we'll give you the no trade clause, and he was there. He would have played with the Clippers, and at less than he did for the 76ers because he wanted to stay there. So I think the Clippers made a huge mistake is all I'm saying, unless they got something better. If they got something better, good, but they don't.
I'm trying to make sense of it myself, Mac. I could understand if they were in a rebuilding situation and you don't sign Paul George, but they signed James Harden.
Right.
But maybe they thought $35 million a year for 2 years. They'll at least invest that, because even though you're rebuilding, you want to be competitive. You want to be in the playoff mix while you're rebuilding. And the Clippers were hoping to get a couple of other free agents. They were hoping maybe Klay Thompson would sign with them. DeRozan. They were just hoping to make some little subtle moves to be relevant still. They had to retain Tyronn Lue, their head coach, which they did. They made him an aggressive head coaching offer to hold on to him. So the Clippers kind of put themselves in nowhere land. They're stuck with Kawhi Leonard the next couple of years, and they'll have James Harden. And I don't know at what level Harden's going to perform. But you're right. Some of these star players, if it's their free agent year, they're really going to perform. You talk about contracts even, like Jalen Brunson, for example, with the Knicks. If he signs an extension with the Knicks now, rather than wait one more year till he's a free agent, he could be leaving $100 million on the table. But a 3-year extension now will get him $152 million for 3 years, as opposed to something like $252 million for, the 3 years or the 4 years, excuse me.
Right. And of course, what he's saying, the story of the whole story on that is he's considering doing that just so the Knicks don't go to that second apron and they have a chance to get more players and build a more of a contender of a team than they have now. Because he said he's not going anywhere. He's going to stay with the Knicks. He loves the Knicks.
Right. But that's part of it, and I'm not saying it's not a big part of it, because Jalen Brunson strikes everyone as a team first type guy. But Jalen Brunson has been given the bulk of the offensive responsibility. So sometimes it's not that hard to be a team guy if you can do whatever the heck you want out on the court. But his dad's an assistant coach.
Right.
He seems to be a good guy. And then there's the X factor too. They have to be thinking you're one injury away from not even getting the 3-year deal. If he suffers a severe injury, he's not going to get 3 years, $152 million. If they question his ability to come back from a really bad injury, he might just get a 1-year deal at $25 million. So you consider the middle ground. Do you take the money and the security when it's there, or do you wait the extra year? I'm a big believer you take the money when you can get it, unless you have enough money for lifetime security as is. Even if you got injured and can never get another contract again, you're comfortable the rest of your life because you don't live that extravagantly. All situations are different. But it's a noble thing Jalen Brunson would do, taking less money, if you're talking about $100 million less. But it's hard to believe he would leave that on the table, really.
We'll see what happens. I know, as you said, his dad's on the team. He's got his players around him from college. He loves Thibodeau. The guy absolutely speaks in favor of Thibodeau every time he talks. So we'll see what happens with that. Klay Thompson, you brought up too. Klay Thompson thinks that he might be the missing piece for Dallas to win that championship. And of course, he's a very humble guy. But also, Jack, they did add Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes. nobody's talking about that. Two solid players on Dallas that really had no depth last year. So do the Mavericks keep pace this year? It's a very competitive West, but some two sneaky moves along with Klay Thompson to keep them relevant at least.
Yeah, Tim Hardaway Jr., they moved on from him. It should be pointed out. Yeah, I mean, Dallas should be in the mix, but it doesn't work that way in the NBA. They're thinking, oh, we got to the finals, and now we made a couple of moves. So this should be able to put us over the top and make us NBA champions. It's going to be so hard to get back to the finals for them.
No doubt.
So hard, even with the moves that they've made. But Klay Thompson isn't the player he was. He's basically a post-up outside shooter.
Yeah.
Okay? And he's just not the player he was. But can he contribute? Absolutely. Can he help Dallas? Absolutely. And Quentin Grimes is a player who maybe will break out. Maybe he'll be a breakout player this year. Yeah. He's certainly shown signs of it now and then throughout his career. But yeah, it's good moves. They have a little more depth, Dallas. Yeah. They might be a little better team during the regular season, but now you're talking about the playoffs and the loaded,
the West is crazy. There was a 17-year-old freshman, Jack, Cooper Flagg. He wows Team USA in an exhibition game. The Team USA, of course, playing exhibition games there in Vegas at the time. And this 17-year-old kid had 17 points. Let me see if I can get them all for you. 17 points in a 74-73 loss. And he's the early favorite right now, according to the papers, of being a number one draft in 2025. And the Team USA players raved about this guy. This kid is hustle, is will to win. I mean, Team USA just barely beat him, and this kid was out of sight. So a name to look forward through next year. I think he's with Duke, if I'm not mistaken. And,
we'll see how he performs in the college season. We've seen cases like that. No. He's going to be drafted in the first round and probably highly, and he's the favorite right now to go number one overall. But as the season progresses, a couple of other players might break out and be outstanding, and Cooper Flagg might, for we know, drop a few slots. I mean, who knows? I mean, right now he'd be the number one overall pick, and people think he's going to be outstanding. But, let him play the season out and see what happens. He could be a game changer. He might be a future Hall of Famer who could turn a franchise around as well. But the jury's still out. We know he'll be good. He'll be a good NBA player. The question is, will he be a really great one?
It was just a nice read listening to, Drew Holiday and all these great players saying this kid just wants to win. And 17-year-olds competing with the NBA players. It was pretty cool. Yeah.
And you take the body language, the way he stands up to these established NBA players. Anthony Davis blocked his shot a couple of days ago, and Cooper Flagg gets the ball right back, passes it to a teammate, cuts to the basket, gets the pass, and slams it in.
Yes, you saw it too. Let's see. Zach Edey, of course, his exhibition summer lead, did it on both ends of the court. First appearance, 14 points, 15 rebounds, 4 blocks. Now, of course, he's going against the young kids from college for the most part, right? This is what they're playing. You can maybe have some bench players that are playing down there right now. But for the most part, you're going against kids. You went against these number one draft choices or number 2 draft choices in the NBA. So you're still playing college kids. But Zach Edey is going to be interesting to me because if he does do what he's capable of doing, if he does what he did in college, maybe the NBA starts rethinking the big man down under, Jack. Maybe it becomes maybe they kind of visit the past again where, the rebounds, the putbacks are a big part of the game. Be interesting to me.
No, it's not. Zach Edey's not going to change the way the game is played. I mean, that's nonsense. I mean, maybe if you get a Lou Alcindor type coming out of college, that type of player, yeah, he could change things. If you get a big guy who's a truly great player, big guy who's a superstar player, but how many of them are you ever going to find? Come on. Zach Edey's very good. And the 8 teams that went before the Memphis Grizzlies might regret not taking him for the most part. Even though a lot of people felt at number 9 he went too early. They were surprised Memphis took him at number 9. But he's not going to change the way the game's played. But I think he's going to be a really good NBA player. I was hoping some way, somehow, the Knicks could have worked something out for him. You know, he would have been a good fill-in for Hartenstein, who went to OKC. But Zach Edey's going to be a really good player, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, if he's good as Luke Longley was for the Bulls, I mean, that's a piece of something. You know what I'm saying? So
I would hope he beat that. Luke Longley was.
He was good.
He was
for the team.
I mean, come on, Luke Longley.
For the team. He was good in that team setting, Jack. He was a piece that you could fill in if you have a really good team. Yeah, you could plug Luke Longley in, but he's not the one that's going to make the team really good. But he's going to grab your rebound. He's going to grab your rebound. He's going to score every now and then, and he's just a nice piece. That's all I'm saying. He's a nice piece.
Okay. But you hope for Zach Edey, it's more than that.
Yeah,
he's more than just a nice piece. You hope he's a perennial starter, who makes the team a lot better, not just like a fill-in.
See, well, here's the comparison I'm making, Jack. Now, I was down in New Mexico in the military while Luke Longley was the star in New Mexico. He was a star in college in that division. Luke Longley was not only a star, he was voted number 1 basketball player in the country. So it's going to be interesting. I'm just interested in this. That's all. I'm just going to watch this and see if he gets any playing time, if he can work his way up.
Of all the guys drafted out of college this year, he was one of the big names. He's one of the people we pay attention to. He took Purdue on that great ride to the finals of the NCAA tournament, and Zach, he's a good player. He's a good player, but let's see how he does. You're right. He was playing against basically college players that were rookies there. Let's see how he does against, the elite guys. But he's a big guy. So he's certainly got height. I think he has physicality where he can bang if need be.
Yes, he's definitely a banger. Definitely a banger. That's going to be interesting.
Maybe he'll be a clean version of Bill Laimbeer. How's that?
Maybe. Well, if he is, that's pretty good. If he is,
Laimbeer was a good player, but he was such a dirty player. It overshadowed him.
Right, you are correct. A little bit. Let's get into baseball news. Of course, the Yanks have lost 15 out of 23 games. Got the worst record right now as losing streaks go. Believe it or not, Jack, they are still odds-on favorite for the AL to win the World Series, as the Dodgers are in the NL. All the money, though, is going to the Orioles and the Phillies to be the World Series. So these are the odds that Vegas is putting, Yankees and Dodgers, and the money's coming in on the Orioles and the Phillies.
I thought they lost 17 out of 23, not 15 out of 23.
Oh, sorry, 17 out of 23. There you go.
Okay, yeah. I mean, who knows in the playoffs? Brian Cashman said it best. He went down to Tampa to watch the Yankees play because they're really struggling, and he felt he needed to make the trip down there. But he said the Yankees were fortunate they had a big cushion early in the year. So they were in good shape to at least get in as a wild card. Unless this horrid play is continuing for weeks and weeks, they're in good, they're still in good position, and they're bound to turn it around at some point. I mean, who knows with the playoffs? Everyone has as good a chance as the other team. Do the Yankees have a better chance than the Cleveland Guardians right now? I mean, I shouldn't say right now because the Yankees offer right now, ultimately in the playoffs. So they have a better chance than, the Orioles. I mean, do they even have a better chance than the Houston Astros? Good chance the Astros could get in as a wild card, even win their division. The Astros only a couple of games out.
Yeah.
Do the Yankees have a better chance than these teams? Let's say, for argument's sake, when the Yankees get it together, you could say all these teams have just as good a chance as the other ones. And if you have about 4 or 5 teams in the mix, it only gives you a 20 to 25% chance of, getting into the series.
You could, but the biggest problem I have with the Yankees right now is not actually, well, the players, yes, a little bit, but what you said to beginning, oh, good, we have a cushion, we still got a wild card chance. Listen, that's not what you say as the GM of the Yankees. You say they're terrible right now. They got to get their butts in gear. That's what you say. I'm tired of all this niceness coming out from Cashman and Steinbrenner. Listen, if George was around, he'd be kicking. A manager might get fired. There's no urgency on the Yankees anymore, Jack. There is no more urgency on that team. There is no more somebody yelling at somebody sitting somebody down, somebody taking somebody behind closed doors and giving it to them. And that's the biggest problem with the Yankees. Not just their talent, not just their holes in not just their relief staff. There is no sense of urgency on the Yankees anymore. And that's what ticks me off about the Yankees.
But, that sounds good. Sense of urgency, guys getting in one another's face. It all sounds good, but that's all a show, Mac, for the most part. Yeah, sometimes behind closed doors, you've got to get in a guy's face. Sometimes certain guys respond to that. Certain guys, it makes it worse when you do that. You got to look, Mac, position for position. You got to look at the situation.
Yeah, you got to look, to me, you got to look for a leader right now. George Steinbrenner, Billy Martin, even the managers after Billy Martin, if you're not going to play at full speed, if you're going to make bonehead mistakes that cost you the game, you're going to be spoken to. But that's the way it was in the beginning of the year, Jack. That was their training camp. That's what they did from the get-go every year. And I watched the films of the Yankees training camps and that with Martin and Lemon, and these guys were managers. It was very intense. I don't know if it's intense or not anymore, and I know it's a different ball game, but when you're making bonehead mistakes and you're not hustling, it costs nothing to hustle, Jack. It doesn't do anything.
I know, but outside of the play with Grisham, and I know earlier Gleyber Torres running the bases, guys play hard for the most part. They do. I mean, I don't want to hear that they're not hustling.
There is no consequences right now. There's got to be consequences. There's got to be a standard. Right now, I don't know what the standard is. Right now, it's okay. We're going to be okay. No, that's not. We'll figure it out. No, if you don't know what the problem is, you'll figure it out. The fans watching know what the problem is. You've got
Mac, you have to look towards who the leaders are on this Yankee team as opposed to past ones. And it's all about personalities. You can be a good leader without being intimidating. You could be a very good leader by being an intimidator. The past Yankee teams, we would hear all this stuff about Derek Jeter. Oh, what leadership. Derek Jeter wasn't the primary lead on that Yankee team. All the show about him being the captain it sounded good. The fans loved it. The fans bought into it. But Posada was more of a leader than Jeter. He would get in guys' faces. CC Sabathia was more of a leader than Jeter. Sabathia had a presence about him. Jeter would talk to guys quietly. Right. That was his style. Which was good. This was a form of leadership. But Matt, look at the current Yankee leaders. I could say there are 3 guys who perhaps are leaders on the team. Obviously, Judge, the captain, his style is very quiet and gentle talking to guys. Anthony Rizzo, he's out now, so he can't really lead the way he is. He's in the dugout, but it's not the same. His style is like Judge's. You talk to guys very nice, quiet, and you let them know and you work with them. And then there's Garrett Cole. Cole, even though he seems to be a little temperamental when he's out on the mound, his style isn't really to get in a guy's face. His style is to kind of be supportive. He's not as intimidating, none of those 3 guys as a CC Sabathia or Jorge Posada. And you
But
know, and then you look, but
But
the
Jack, what
bottom
I'm
line
saying
is guys
that
have
is
to
what
play better.
that is, yeah, but they're not going to play better if there's no consequences, Jack. If I know I can lollygag on a
I
play,
would have.
if I know I don't have to hustle, how much? What example is that? That's where you need a strong manager, and one of the players has got to step up. They got to step up and say, "Hey, listen, man, we don't win like this." Now, I don't know who that's got to be. I don't know who it should be, but I'm telling you right now, Jack, there is no sense of an urgency. And what I mean by urgency, I know it's a long season, but I'm talking about at the game time. One game at a time, man. You've got to have a sense of urgency to win the game. They don't. And you could only win by power so much, Jack. You can go out there and hit 3 home runs every other game and maybe get by. You've got to have a team that hustles. That's why when you look at the Cincinnati Reds with De La Cruz and all these guys are hustling, they're trying to steal home. They're stealing 2-3 bases at a time. That's how you lead without yelling. And this is why De La Cruz is turning into, he just tied Ricky Henderson for the most steals and home runs at the All-Star break. A young player that's excitable and that shows what you do, what hustle can get you. He wins a couple of games just on his hustle alone, Jack. This is what the Yankees are missing. And we do have a couple of young players out there that could do this. And I'm just saying, Jack, I get it. It's a different game than it was back then. But you have got to have every game, you have got to have a plan, and you've got to get excited. You're in first place. Play like you're in first. They're not anymore. Play like you're in first place. Play like you want to go to the playoffs and do something. And right now, Jack, they're not.
They're just not hitting for the most of Mac, it's not hustle isn't the problem at all.
Jack,
It's just they're not hitting. Go position. Look at Thatcher, Trevino, and Austin Wells. They're not really hitting.
I saw.
Ben Rice.
Listen, Jack, hitting is about being aggressive to a point. I'm telling you that either they're not studying enough because they got talent. They're not hustling. I know they're not hustling enough on overall. Some do. Overall, they're not hustling enough. And there is no, there's no umph. There's no umph. It's all laid back. Rondon could get mad and throw his glove all he wants and give up 4 runs. That don't do nothing. That's not leading. So anyway, I don't know. I'm not going to get upset about the Yankees team.
You can't defend them the way they're playing. I can understand your frustration, but you just have to look at the lineup. And I'll agree with you. When Grisham loafed on the hit to center field a week ago, and the runner got to second because he didn't hustle at all. He was very indifferent on the play. There are 2 ways of looking at it. I mean, it's easy you're not going to take him out on the spot, get a replacement coming on the field because you blow the situation up even more. But at the end of the inning, when he came back to the dugout, you could replace him at that moment. And you're sending a message. I agree with that. But I could look at it another way. If that's the only time he hasn't hustled for a ball and it was a one-time thing, you talk to the guy. Look, you're embarrassing, everyone. And you say it to the reporters. Look, I talked with them about it right after the game. It's unacceptable. If it happens again, there are going to be consequences. He understands that. Something like that makes everyone look bad, but it's never happened before. So he stood in the game. We're going to move on from this as long as it doesn't happen again. That would have been the best way of handling it, I think, because if you take him out at the end of the inning, it becomes even bigger news.
I would that would be my style, Jack. I don't disagree with what you said, but I definitely would. I would have pulled.
I can understand. Especially as a player who's not hitting and sitting on the 200, you can get on him. But they're different players, and you act differently towards all of them. If that was Aaron Judge in center field, you're not going to bench him. You're not going to this and that. You'll just tell Aaron Judge, look, you understand a lot's about perception, and you don't want people to think you don't hustle because we know you do hustle, but that one play, you had like a mental lapse or something. We understand that. But, you got to be alert on these plays. what people are going to think. You don't want the criticism, and you let it go with the talk.
So Blake Snell is back. He's activated off the IL. Kind of a bad situation with him right now. We'll see if he can bounce back. They've got
Blake Snell signed a 2-year contract with the Giants. He has an option to be a free agent at the end of the season, pick up his second-year option. That's at $32.5 million. He's going to pick up a second-year option because he's not having a good year this year. And unless he's lights out the rest of the year, he's not going to want to test the free agent market again because it didn't work out from last year.
And the Phillies get Schwarber and Harper back. They've been doing fine without him. That's how good of a team they got right now, especially Bryce Harper, good in the field, good at the bat. And Schwarber, of course, got some power. So they kept winning. And the Mets, Jack, just keep on winning. So the little brothers are kind of showing
the Mets haven't kept on winning. What do you mean they keep on winning?
Last
the Mets
night.
around
They won
500.
They won last night, 7.
A couple of games in a row. So, I mean, I think they lost the day. I think they won 1 in a row, and they lost the day before. They've won a game, lost the game, won a game, lost the game. I mean, they had a little streak going, a couple of weeks ago to get them to 500. They did well. They did really well, for 2-3 weeks, and now they've kind of leveled out and then playoff position. For now.
Yeah,
well, listen, maybe they'll get to the playoffs. They're in the mix, so
maybe there's a good chance. And kind of crazy news. I don't even like talking about this stuff, but I have to because it was in the news. Former shortstop for the I think it's Tampa Bay Rays. Let me get his name right here. Wander. Thank you. Yes. Has been charged with, being with a 14-year-old girl. I guess her mother took money and a new car, so much a month, so that she would be able to go, so that she could stay with him. So things are getting bad there. He's going to be in a lot of trouble, and of course, kind of bad news. NFL suspends Pittsburgh's Cameron Sutton for 8 games for violation of the personal code of conduct. Domestic battery with strangulation, so he's in trouble. Brett Favre, he's reviving his lawsuit, Jack, against Shannon Sharpe for defamation. If you remember, that comes from an audit from Louisiana, where the Department of let me see if I get this. I guess it's one of the departments in Louisiana that takes care of the welfare and all that stuff. $77 million was misspent. $1.1 million went to Brett Favre for a speaking fee. Shannon Sharpe on Undisputed said a couple things about him. One of it was you must be a sorry person to steal money from the lowest of the low. He basically called him a thief. Favre did attempt to sue him. The federal court threw it out, saying that that Sharpe was within his constitutional rights as a sports broadcaster to give his opinion. And of course, the lawyers for Brett Favre say it was defamation. So that's going to be taken up again, Jack. There was news that came down the pike of, revisiting this. So Favre went in and reinstated this, and it'll be interesting to see what happens here. Some of the comments were directed towards Brett Favre.
Well, at what point? I'm not going to comment on the case. I have no idea with Brett Favre. I just hear something on the news. I'm not going to give any type of opinion on that because I don't know enough about it. But if a judge makes a ruling, I didn't know how many times can you bring the case up again now for another judge to hear, and then another judge. Is it best 2 out of 3? Let's say the next judge rules with Favre. Does Shannon Sharpe now get to appeal to another judge? When does it end exactly? I don't know.
Well, the last judge, it can go all the way up to U.S. Supreme Court. If they don't hear it, it will. If they refuse to hear it, it'll be the last judge in the Fed. It goes to a circuit court, Jack. So if it goes to the 9th Circuit, 7th Circuit, whatever. Yeah. There's different circuit courts. So that would be the last ruling.
Supreme Court, with all their responsibilities, but For them
Well,
to have
it
a
would-
case like that, yeah.
It would probably be raised for constitutional right of freedom of speech would probably be what would it be under, and maybe they would hear it. I don't know. I think it's kind of frivolous, but it is what it is. So they could hear it. I don't know if they would. Who knows? So yeah, 1.1 million for a speaking fee. Of course, this was supposed to go to a team. His daughter played on the volleyball team down there in Louisiana. I don't think he would rip off. I don't know. I
can't comment on it for mine. I don't know nothing about it. Let it play out, and when it plays out conclusively, then maybe we can have an opinion, on it.
Let's do a little Olympic news. We're going to take a look at the AFC North too. I'm going to get a little Olympic news out of the way. Maryland, a 16-year-old Quincy Wilson made the 120 person roster for the track and field team for the United States. I mean, if he gets to participate, I think the 4x400 that he is a member, that he would participate in. He would be the youngest track and field person to be in there at 16 years old. I think it's tremendous that he just made the squad. They're saying he's one of the 120th fastest people in the country. I mean, that's pretty impressive, Jack.
Well, yeah, I mean, I saw him in the Olympic trials, Quincy Wilson, and actually in one of the heats, he came in third place out of the 8 runners, and he's been running competitive times. I mean, he can hold his own. He can hold his own with the elite guys, okay, even at the age of 16. And consider this, when you're 16 and you can run the 400 meters that fast, you're just going to get faster, in the next couple of years. As we get closer to the Olympics, he might even turn it up a little level. But he's not going to be a liability for the U.S. team, and he's a great story. They don't have to use him for the finals.
No.
They can use him in the heat, okay? And this way it could save maybe their better runners for the finals. But even if he was on the team in the finals, he can hold his own there, okay? He's one of these great phenoms. Youngest runner at 16. Before that, I believe, was Jim Ryan, a mile at age 17, who made the 64th Olympic team.
Very cool. Hazley Rivera met Simone Biles at 17, and now she's the youngest member of the United States gymnast team. Kind of reminds me of Tom Brady. People growing up watching him and end up on his team. So that's pretty cool too. So
it is. You have to be in awe when you're a kid. You're watching these great athletes, and then you are all of a sudden playing on their team or playing against them. And I always remember what Joe Namath said. His idol was Johnny Unitas. That was his guy who he watched, because Unitas was from Pennsylvania originally, and Namath was from Beaver Falls, Pennsylvania. And they even gave Namath the nickname when he was a kid coming up, Johnny U. And now he's on the field for the Super Bowl. And even though Unitas is injured and there was a good chance he wasn't going to play, they come out for the coin toss. And Namath said that was the only time he was nervous during the game. He was like all shook up, seeing Johnny U, face to face. It was like, that was powerful to him.
Yeah, very cool. The USA basketball team, of course, as we talked about earlier, they were warming up. There's some basketball teams, world basketball teams out there that could compete with them. Now they're saying, saying this team's going to dominate. I don't know about that. The U.S. Team, the basketball team, has not really been dominating the last couple of Olympics, but they do have some teams that definitely will give them a run for their money. Germany won the FIBA World Cup, so they're a kind of surprising team out there that might give the USA some trouble. Of course, Serbia has Nikola Jokic and Bogdan Bogdanovic on their team. France with Victor Wembanyama, and of course Rudy Gobert will give them a little trouble. And of course Giannis is on the French team, so they're thinking it might be pretty exciting at the Olympics.
It's going to be interesting. Let me tell you why. Because the United States hasn't played as a team for long, and there just hasn't been enough time, and there won't be enough time to truly gel as a team. They'll do the best they can. Maybe they'll gel to a large extent but not to their max and it's not their fault because they haven't had that much time to play together, leading into the Olympics. But take these other NBA stars from the other countries. They're joining teams that have gelled and have played together. And these stars are like free agent pickups for these other countries. They're adding stars to their team.
Great point.
And their team already knows how to play together as a team because that's what they've been doing for a long period of time, unlike the USA. So even though the USA is going to be favored to win the gold, it's far from a certain thing. I mean, there's a good chance they won't.
Yeah, that's a great point, Jack. I mean, it kind of reminds me of the teams in college that have the 4-year teams going against the teams that just get 1-year players and they're rookies and they're ready to get rid of them, and they do very well in tournaments. The teams that have played together for a while, so I think it's going to be very interesting, and I wouldn't be surprised if the United States doesn't grab gold this year. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, there's a lot of talent on the USA squad. But how well are they going to play together? Is the big question. Well, we don't know. Like you even mentioned, it's Serbia, Jokic joining the team. That team probably has such good chemistry. That's my point. The other countries have such nice chemistry because the guys have been together, not just for training camp, but some of them have been together for years.
Yeah.
And the United States is the most talented team you could maybe say, but that's not necessarily going to win it.
I agree, Jack. Let's take a look at the AFC North, and to me, maybe the most interesting, competitive, division in all the NFL, because each team has its, it has its perks. Each team has its flaws, and I'm not sure if there's really going to be a clear first place team here. There might be a tie on top. There might be 1 game, 2 games separate all four teams. That's how close I think they are, Jack. And depends. A lot of it's going to depend on certain key things. And let's start with the Pittsburgh Steelers. We know Russell Wilson's there. We know Justin Fields is there. We know that the Steelers are a very physical defense. They can keep you. People in games, even with Pickett's as their quarterback, and Rudolph and another quarterback I think even played last year for him. They still were near the top in the AFC North. Now they get an experienced quarterback who has been to a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, and they have a very exciting young athletic quarterback also that could go in and do certain plays with them. It gives them a little bit of maybe flexibility that they didn't have last year. They normally have a good running game. They got a good tight end. They're a little off at wide receiver. They got one right now that's considered maybe a very, very good wide receiver. They need another one. And it all depends on the quarterback situation, maybe, Jack, whether this team wins the division or not.
Yeah, I just don't know what to make out of Pittsburgh. I'm not high on their quarterback situation. That people are thinking, oh, we have Russell Wilson. Well, Seattle moved on from Russell Wilson. Denver moved on from Russell Wilson. That's 2 teams in a row. And Seattle did very well when they moved on from Russell Wilson. So, and he's not the same player he was years ago. And don't tell me about Justin Fields. Justin Fields isn't going to be a difference maker. I don't look for him to particularly thrive. Maybe he'll get in, he'll play well. Pittsburgh's got to win this on defense. They're not going to win it on the passing game. Najee Harris is a real good running back. But, their defense led by T.J. Watt is really going to have to step up this year. They're going to have to be one of the best defensive units in the league. I just see the Steelers around the 500 type club, 9-8. They've had winning seasons, something like 17 years in a row. Yes. And I see them barely maybe having a winning season and maybe going 8-9 this year. I just don't see them as a next step team. I don't see them taking the step up to 12-5, even 11-6. I don't quite see them taking that step up. Maybe 10-7. I would think anywhere from 8 to 10 wins. You know, if I had to talk about the Steelers season, that's the range I think they would be in. And if I had to guess 10-7 or 8-9, at this point I might even say 8-9. You know, that their winning streak, you know, consecutive seasons maybe comes to an end because the quarterback position. It's a liability.
I think the quarterback is an upgrade from Kenny Pickett. How's that?
Fair enough, because they have, well, maybe, because I'm not sure that Justin Fields is an upgrade from Mason Rudolph for that particular team. I'm just not that sure. If
you're giving Mason Rudolph a pass because he played 1 or 2 good games, Jack. That's all he played. It's not like he played a whole season and played well, or even 4 or 5 games.
Justin Fields was there for 3 years with the Bears.
With a different team. With a team that wasn't good, Jack.
The bottom line is this.
With a team that's not as good as the Steelers, Jack. That's a big difference. It's not the Bears. It's the Steelers. So you're going to have a well-coached team, very good defense, good special teams, a physical offense. I'm not saying just Fields. I mean, that's something very nice for Russell Wilson to step into, too. I disagree with 8-9. I think they'll do better than 8-9. I think they'll be challenging, but they do have their drawbacks. And that I agree with you with. Cincinnati, defensively, not the best. Burrows was hurt last year. Lamar Chase and Higgins, I don't know if you can win just by throwing the ball in this division. Maybe you can. But I think Burrows is a question mark and their defense is a question mark, Jack.
You know, a year ago, I picked Cincinnati to win the Super Bowl, and they didn't even make the playoffs. Shows you how much I know. So when I say people shouldn't consider me an expert in any way, shape, or form, just had a bad year. Burrow got hurt early. But it was, you know, kind of more than that. Something was missing on that team. I mean, not so much the offensive line that's been a problem throughout the years. You know, the elite receivers, you know, Jamar Chase, Higgins, it's Joe Mixon, a running back. It just didn't work out for them last year. And is this going to be a bounce back year? Sometimes we see that in a team. We expect them to have a really good year and they have a subpar year. But then the next year they do what we thought they were going to do. And I think that's the case with Cincinnati, you know, more so than any other team in the NFL. I think you could say about the Cincinnati Bengals, will the real Cincinnati Bengal team stand up? Because this year is going to let us know whether they're Super Bowl contender, not just this year, but going forward, or whether they're just one of many teams, you know, in the middle of the pack. We're going to find out a lot about them this year. And I have a feeling they might surprise people this year. They might have a really good year.
Okay. Baltimore lost some defensive players to free agency, lost their defensive coordinator. That's Baltimore's strength. They do have, you know, Derrick Henry, which that should help the running game somewhat, but they had a good running game last year. They won one of the best running games in football. So it's going to maybe make it a little bit better, maybe. But with Lamar Jackson and Henry and their other running backs they got there, they run pretty much, you know, the option game off the run, the RPOs. But their defense is what made Baltimore great and is what they depended on. It's a little weaker this year, Jack. I don't know if they have it. I don't know if they're going to be challenging for first place this year in that division.
Well, they got Dalvin Cook last year, so they picked him up. So I don't know how good their running game really was last year. You said one of the best running games. It
was with Lamar Jackson. It was.
Well, with Lamar Jackson, if you consider what Lamar Jackson does with his legs, they have one of the best running games. Yeah, and they're going to be in the mix, Baltimore. They're well coached by John Harbaugh. A lot of people are going to have them as favorites to go to the Super Bowl. And it's hard to live down that loss in the championship game at home to the Kansas City Chiefs, where they lost 17-10. You know, they really didn't play well in that game. They didn't show up. They'll have Mark Andrews back. He wasn't there at the end of the year. They're great tight end. assuming, he's healthy, to start the year, and all reports are he will. Derrick Henry, how much of a force he's going to be a running back? He's kind of towards the maybe tail end of his prime. I don't see him as being a big force. They picked up a great draft choice that they got, Nate Clemens at cornerback. He's going to be one of the best, one of the best rookies in the league. I think he was a steal for them. I mean, I think he should have been a top 10 selection. And he fell all the way to the mid-20s or wherever they picked it, the late 20s. And that was a steal, Nate Clemens at cornerback.
Last team to talk about, Jack, is the Cleveland Browns, and we've been talking about them a lot in our Sports Memory Show, how great a franchise it was in the 40s, 50s, and early 60s. And they made a move to pick up their franchise quarterback. It hasn't panned out yet. He had a little bit of a spurt at the end of the year, but got hurt. Joe Flacco brings them to the playoffs, and they do okay. They got a good defense again. Their running game with Chubbs, I don't know if he's back or not, but they do pound. They do pound with their ground game. All they need is a quarterback over there to make them a legitimate championship contender. Is this the year finally that Deshaun Watson shows his face, Jack?
Well, he's shown his face at Houston, and I think this is going to be a bounce back year for Deshaun Watson. He was showing signs of that with Cleveland before he got hurt. I think Deshaun Watson reestablishes himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL this year. That's my prediction. Most people don't feel the same way. They're down on Deshaun Watson because he hasn't done anything in a couple of years since he's been with Cleveland. One year he was rusty a bit coming off the suspension, and then last year it was kind of sluggish until he started having, a couple of really good games. And Cleveland's defense with Myles Garrett, that's going to have to play the fact that if they're going to finally make their first Super Bowl, the defense is really going to have to be elite. And what happened to that defense? And even Myles Garrett didn't have a sack the last 5 games of the season. And that elite defense didn't even show up against the Houston Texans in the playoffs.
You're right. And, maybe it's just a matter of being, depending on the defense all the time to win your games. Maybe they just got worn out, injuries. I forget, Jack, but you're right. At the end of the season, the defense kind of disappeared for Cleveland. We're almost out of time, Jack. I want to get your real quick thought, your point of view. Boots Ennis at 31-0, going against replacement fighter David Venesian. I hope I'm saying that right. 34 losses and 1 tie. He looks like he's a pretty good fighter. I don't know if he's in Boots' class.
Matt, get the records correct. You make it seem like Venesian was unbeaten. He got knocked out by Terrence Crawford in his last fight. So don't say 34 victories, 30 and 1 tie.
34-1. So 30 wins, 4 losses, 1 tie.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's a showcase fight for Boots Ennis. That's really what it is. It's in his hometown of Philadelphia, which is good for the city of brotherly love that they'll start supporting one of their own in boxing. They do in other sports. And it's good that he's home. He'll get his exposure and, he'll get his stoppage in all probability. And then he's going to call out Terrence Crawford, make some noise, and get his career in the right direction. Boots Ennis has to fight more. I can understand he can't get big fights, and that's frustrating. But you could fight more. The opponents like this, who you can fight 3 times a year at least, and that's what he's got to do. I mean, he can't win Saturday night, look good, and then do a lot of talking and then not fight again for 7-8 months. He's got to keep busy.
Okay, great. Okay. We know that Terrence Crawford is ducking Boots right now as he's fighting fighters that have 12 fights. I think he's scheduled to fight after that. He has a fighter with 5.
On August 3rd. Yes. I don't know if he's ducking him. That's a debatable thing, but
I heard.
He's a boy but if the money was there,
This is
You
this
know,
is a
who's
through the
saying
grapevine,
wouldn't
Jack. Through the grapevine, I heard he's looking at fighting after he beats this guy with 12 fights, at fighting an up and coming star that has 5 wins and no losses. I think that's his next fight that he's due to fight. So anyway, keep avoiding him, Terrence. Keep avoiding Boots, and you'll be fine. Folks, have a great Wednesday. Up next is Coffee and Sports. We'll see you live back here Friday, and don't forget about us tonight on the National Professional Sports Show. Have a great one, folks.